Hello.
2-year-old Landon is one of many younger siblings of autistic children now enrolled in research programs throughout North America.
The basic goal is to better understand early development in autism, as well as early behavioral signs. We would like to believe that if we can sort of be detecting some of these early signs even at a year and starting to work with those children, maybe we can actually modify the expression of those early impairments. Thank you.
No.
Thank you.
No.
Landon is at a higher than average risk for autism because his older brother, Lucas, is in the moderate to severe range of the autism spectrum.
He struggles a lot socially with the other kids and trying to interact with them, but he's doing all right.
Landon has been followed since he was 8 months old, and by 18 months was showing some behavioral warning signs.
Landon. When we saw him at 18 months, he had very little eye contact. He really wasn't initiating a lot of interaction. He had a gorgeous smile, but it was really hard to sort of connect with him. He was very much doing his own thing and getting very fixated on repetitive kind of play activities. Now, we weren't at the point where we were able to be fully conclusive about whether he had a diagnosis, but we were certainly able to respond to the specific challenges that he had, like his lack of communication, his difficulty engaging, and his sort of limited repertoire of play interests.
Among the interventions was teaching Landon some sign language. And now, 6 months later...
More! I was just amazed at how spontaneous he was, how communicative, using some words. Gesturing, using his signs spontaneously, and just how flexible he was. I mean, this was an enjoyable interaction for him today. He enjoyed the different play activities. He was able to move from one play activity to another. He was like feeding the baby the pretend cake. Whereas before, at 18 months, if he had started with the balls, that would have been pretty much most of what he was doing for that half-an-hour assessment.
I thought he did really well. I think that's probably his best session ever.
Vroom, vroom, vroom. You do it.
He really cooperated, and he did all the tasks that was asked of him. And he actually surprised me a couple of times. It was like, wow, he can do that.
You do it. Your turn. Oh, good job. Eliza.
6-month-old Eliza is also the sibling of a child diagnosed with autism.
Our experience so far in the children who've gone on to develop a diagnosis of autism, the differences are really very subtle at 6 months. I mean, these are not children that one would be struck by as having severe social impairments. I mean, they're making eye contact, they're smiling, you can kind of get a simple game of peekaboo going, but in retrospect are perhaps a little more passive, not quite as responsive to that social interaction, and interestingly have some lags in motor development. Oh. One thing that's striking, although is certainly seen in some of the kids who are perfectly fine, is just how quiet she was. And whether that's sort of typical for her or whether that's sort of more related to being in a new surrounding with new people is something that I'll ask her mom a little bit about. I think we're still learning about what we should be looking for in these 6-month-olds, and I think it's still an open question whether these sort of somewhat open-ended and less structured social assessments are going to kind of give us the information we need, or where we need to be targeting sort of more basic processes or sort of basic kinds of tasks.
One of these tasks was developed by Zwigenbaum's co-principal investigator, Susan Bryson.
Once children are looking at something interesting, if you kind of bring up a second similar stimulus, can the child sort of stop looking at that first interesting one in order to move their attention over to the second one? If it's something that's typically well established by 4 months, perhaps the absence by 6 months of this ability to disengage may be a very specific marker of autism.
Landon, meanwhile, is showing every sign of having outgrown the early hints that he may be at risk from autism.
Here's a little boy who seems to be on a very different path, and whether it's the intervention, whether that's the direction he was going, I mean, it's really encouraging to see.